The Red Line Circus. I'll admit it, I'm a sucker for a good carnival. The smell of the artery-clogging food, the thrill of the rides and games, the wonder of the circus performers, it's just so all enthralling. I've been going to carnivals of all sizes since I was just a little kid. The first one I ever went to was one my parents forced me to go to. It was small, just a local one put on by the church that we went to. It wasn't anything spectacular, and it only took up the church's parking lot, but damn, did my 5-year-old self have a ball. Ever since that time, no matter where or when a carnival would pop up in my town, I would beg and plead for my parents to take me. My dad even started saying that one day I would march with the rest of the clowns. Funny guy, right? I've been out of college for less than a year now, sporting a nice theater arts degree that my grandparents were less than thrilled about. "You should have studied to be a lawyer like your mother." That line was spouted during many a family dinner. I love my mom and all, but have you seen the most people who are lawyers? They have this air about them that they're planning to put you on the stand in front of a jury of your peers if you ever say the wrong thing to them. That was certainly not the life for me. Theater was my major and my hobby. I always pictured myself belting out the next Tony Award-winning musical number and standing on the stage with a trophy in my hand and a grin on my face. The audience would give me a standing ovation and I would bow to my adoring fans. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Thinking realistically, that's a dream a little bit too far out of my reach. When I wasn't acting my little heart out on the college stage or studying for some boring history exam, I found myself doing a little bit of traveling. I still loved the carnival, and I always wondered if my Broadway dream fell through if I could run away to the circus. You have to keep those sorts of options open, you know. I bounced around the tri-state area every weekend that I was free, seeing if I could find a carnival or circus that could best the ones that I had previously gone to. I even frequented the occasional Renaissance fair when I was in one of those ye old moods. Each spot that I hit seemed to exceed my expectations every time. There was only a couple of carnivals that I won't mention due to them nearly ruining my opinion on all of them. Let's just say that when the clowns look they just walked out of a rehab clinic and the rides seem as if they're one screw loose from crumbling to the ground, it's not the most fun place to be. It wasn't until a couple short months ago that I stumbled across what has become my absolute favorite carnival and circus combo in the whole world. They call it the Red Line Circus. It's a traveling circus that's been all over the world, and it's made up of the most talented troupe I've ever seen. The thing is, they never advertise when or where they're coming. The circus just pops up in a random place, stays there for about a week, and then disappears as if it were never there. Most people don't even know it exists. That's probably because it's not meant for humans. You see, the Red Line Circus is entertainment for supernatural creatures by supernatural creatures. There isn't a single living human in the entire troupe. Sure, there are spirits and demons who were once human at one point in history, but as they are now, their humanity is all but gone. Any living human that stumbles across it usually has their memories wiped before they can even have any fun. Only humans with a connection to the supernatural have the ability to see and understand everything that's taking place in front of them. Like me. I'm what they call a human of mind, though I'm still not completely sure what that entails. I first came across the Red Line Circus completely by accident. I was driving home from one of my theater rehearsals. It was around 10 at night on a Sunday, so there was barely anyone on the roads. Combine that with the fact that I live practically in the middle of nowhere, and it was a lonely night. I was bordered by miles of farms on both sides as the clear night sky offered a landscape of white and yellow dots. I had my Luke Bryan CD blasting as my headlights pierced through the pitch darkness ahead of me. I even passed by a family of deer that I frequently saw on my drives home. I pulled over for a moment to wave, and the eldest buck came right over to my car. I started calling him Bambi 2. Don't ask what happened to Bambi 1. Bambi 2 is a good deer. Maybe it's this whole human of mind thing, but I've noticed that animals seem to be a lot less nervous around me than with other people. After bidding farewell to the deer, I hopped on the road again and made my way home. I could feel my eyelids starting to get heavy. A good night's rest was definitely in order. The coming week of rehearsals what would be lovingly called in the trade Hell Week. I was going to need my sleep, or else Javert was going to make an ass out of himself in front of the whole dang French Revolution. I could practically feel the warmth coming from my bed. I was only a couple of miles away from home. The sweet release of sleep was soon to be upon me. That's when my 1995 Jeep decided that it had finally had enough of this cruel world and said its final goodbyes with a horrible sputter as every light on the dashboard lit up like it was Christmas. I pulled over to the side as my trusty Jeep crawled to a stop and subsequently blew its engine on the spot. I wasn't sure whether to be sad about the loss of the car I had since high school, nervous that it was completely busted, or angry that it couldn't have lasted another 10 goddamn minutes before kicking the bucket. I just wanted to go to bed. I didn't even bother popping the hood. I knew that all it would greet me was a billow of smoke. It looked like it was time to start walking. Thank goodness it was the middle of summer. I grumbled to myself for the first few minutes, cursing that car and accusing it of purposely dying on me when it knew I so badly needed sleep. Now I was wide awake as a cool breeze smacked me in the face. This was not what I needed. I was around 10 minutes from my home when I began to hear peculiar sounds coming from the woods nearby. At first I wrote it off as some drunk college kids who had wandered off into the woods to get high, but I soon realized that there were a lot more voices than I originally thought. There was even music. If this was a frat party, then they had pulled out all the stops for it. Half of my mind wanted to check it out, while the other half pleaded with me to be sane and go home. I was too awake now to get any good sleep anyway. What would be the harm in crashing the party for a couple minutes? Armed with a flashlight on my phone, I pushed some branches out of the way and entered into the woods. I kept the light directly in front of me, hoping that I didn't accidentally step on a raccoon's tail or anything. After a few more minutes of pushing my way through thorny bushes, I began to see light. And not just any light either. Flashing, colorful lights. The kind of lights you see during carnivals. For a moment I tried to wrap my brain around how I had overlooked another carnival coming to town. Surely I would have seen it posted in the newspaper or online. I make sure to check that at least every couple of days. And what a curious place for it. Smack in the middle of the woods, away from any kind of civilization. What kind of show are they running? I couldn't resist. I picked up my feet and bolted towards the light, disregarding any animals and plants that stood in my way. I broke into the clearing and I couldn't believe my eyes. It was truly a carnival. Lights flashed on every stand and ride, the musical notes of games chimed in the air, and in the middle of it all, a huge red circus tent dominated the landscape. On top of the tent was a wooden sign that read, "Welcome to the Red Line Circus," in fire truck red paint. What a wonderful turn of events. I took a moment to silently apologize to the soul of my vehicle for being so rude. Surely, in its last moments, my Jeep had led me to the promised land. Forget about sleep. This was the place to be. I meandered into the middle of the action, gazing wondrously at the different game and food stands. There were a decent amount of people there, but not nearly as I would have expected for a normal carnival. At first I figured at the time of day on a Sunday, most would be asleep or preparing themselves for the week ahead. It was only until after I took a second glance at several of the patrons that I began to feel a very strange sensation in my gut. The man behind the popcorn stand had eyes that were pitch black and irises that were blood red. A child at the fish cashing game seemed to be floating just a tad, and she almost looked like I could see through her. Did that woman who was on the Ferris wheel have wings? I scrubbed at my eyes and gave a second look. Nothing had changed. I surmised that maybe this was a special circus where everyone was allowed to dress up. Then again, it wasn't even close to Halloween. It was then I noticed a stand with the sign, "Beer and Other Assorted Necessities." A nice stiff drink was just what I needed to get my head on straight. The one behind the counter had dark red hair that was pulled back into a ponytail. Her eyes were a pale gray, and they seemed to be fixated right on my own as I wandered up to her counter. "What can I get for you, stranger?" She spoke in a wispy voice, wearing a smirk on her face the whole time. I glazed over the list of drinks, though none of them were anything I had ever heard of before. "Give me your strongest drink," I spoke heartily. Those theater classes had to come in handy at some time or another. The woman eyed me up and down and broke into a fit of laughter. Her reaction took me off guard, and my face flushed red. It wasn't as if I didn't look like someone who couldn't hold his liquor. I was 6'1" and 200 pounds. I looked like I was better off on the football field rather than the stage. The pale-eyed woman wiped a tear from her eye as her laughing spat died down. "No offense, human, but our strongest stuff would probably put you out of commission for a solid week if you were lucky. If you were unlucky, it would probably kill you." I must have made some wacky, confused features with my face because the woman had to stifle another bout of giggles. I had never heard any kind of alcohol that could kill a man with one shot before. Not to mention, why did she call me human? Was that some kind of shtick with the people who worked here? "Okay," I replied. "Do you have anything that won't put me in the hospital?" The woman winked, held up one finger, and ducked beneath the counter. I inched forward to peek, but she scolded me as if she could see right through the wooden stand. No peeking, nosy human." I immediately pulled away and sat upright. My body seemed to move on its own in accordance to her whims. A moment later, she appeared with a shot glass that was filled with a fiery orange liquid. "I call this one Dragon's Breath," the woman said. "Not too much alcohol, but it burns like lava going down. This one's a favorite of the fire spitters." I eyed the drink nervously, contemplating whether I should actually take it or not. Then I realized that I had already embarrassed myself once with this woman. I couldn't bear to do it a second time. "How much do I owe you?" I asked, sniffing at the liquid before I committed. It smelt as much like fire as the woman had explained it. She shook her head. "Consider this one on the house for a new guest. Your reaction will be all the payment I need." She flashed that coy smirk again, and I wasn't sure if she was trying to kill me or not. I was no wimp, though. I had to prove her wrong. I took a deep breath in, exhaled out, and said a quick prayer should the drink actually burn my esophagus out. Down the hatch. I took the whole shot down in one gulp. For the first 2 seconds, it tasted delicious. It was a citrus flavor with a smoky yet satisfying aftertaste. Then the heat came. Oh God, the heat. It wasn't like a spicy heat or the kick that comes with cinnamon. It was like swallowing pure fire. The woman cackled as my face twisted into pained expressions. I clawed at my throat as it felt like my insides had just gone up in flames. "Just wait for it," the woman snickered. "It'll fade." I barely heard her over the sounds of my own whimpers. I held back the urge to scream. It was quite possibly the worst pain I had felt since the time when I broke my leg in 5th grade. Any amount of humiliation would have been far more tolerable than this. All of a sudden, it was as if the heavens had opened up and saved me from the torment. A wave of cool air seemed to erupt from my stomach, soothing my burning insides completely. I let out a small belch, and a wisp of flame shot from my mouth. Had I not been in a state of shock, I would have thought that I looked pretty damn cool in that moment. I was making more of an ass out of myself, though, as I hadn't realized that I was beginning to stumble backwards. Just as I was about to hit the ground, I found myself supported by 2 pale arms with purple-gloved hands. "Easy there," a bubbly female voice spoke. "Tisiphone, are you trying to kill our guests again?" The red-haired woman shrugged. You can't deny that he liked it. The other woman pulled me up to my feet, though it took me a moment to get my bearings. If that shot did that much damage, how bad was the one that would have put me in the hospital? What about the one that would have killed me? What kind of torturous death would I have suffered? I shuddered just thinking about it. I turned towards the woman who had stopped me from falling, and was shocked to find that, like the bartender, she looked fairly normal compared to some of the other patrons that were floating around. Well, save for the fact that her eyes were completely glazed over milky white. At first I thought that she might have been blind, but she seemed as if she could see perfectly fine. She had long, spiky blonde hair that was covered up by a black and purple top hat. "I'm sorry about that," she apologized. "Tisiphone tends to go a little overboard when it comes to mixing drinks. It's not very often that we get special humans around here, though. From what I can tell, you're a human of mind." The woman's last 2 sentences went straight over my head. This shtick was getting old real quickly. I had just nearly been poisoned, and now I was being told that I was a special human. Was I just insulted? So, is this circus's theme that all of the workers and actors are supernatural beings and the patrons are humans or something? My voice was a bit hoarse while my throat still recovered from Tisiphone's concoction. The woman with the top hat blinked a couple of times before tilting her head to the side. "Oh, it's not a theme," she replied. "Everyone in the Red Line Circus is some sort of non-human being. We have demons, angels, spirits, you name it. Tisiphone here is one of the Furies of Greek legend." My eyes shot open wide. There was no way that was true. I spun to look at the woman behind the counter, and she simply waved at me with the same smirk plastered on her face. If this was an act, then they were doing a pretty good job of making it seem realistic. "Okay," I sputtered out. "Then what are you?" "I'm a Reaper," she beamed. Now this was just getting weird. "You're the Grim Reaper?" "Well, not the Grim Reaper, no. There's over 100 of us. I'm the 64th Reaper. I'm also the ringleader of the Red Line Circus. My name's Cymbeline." I felt like my head was spinning. Maybe this was all just a fever dream from inhaling too many of the fumes from my dying car. It had to be. There was no way that I was standing face to face with a creature that took human souls to the afterlife. It couldn't be possible that I was served a drink by a legendary spirit of vengeance. Where the hell was I, really? Cymbeline grabbed both of my hands and peered into my eyes with her own blank ones. Even though they were empty, I sensed a strange liveliness within them. This woman, this Reaper, seemed as if she really cared about the circus around her. I still didn't understand everything, even the weird sense that I was getting, but it made me feel a little more at ease. I know this may seem like a lot of information to throw at you all at once, but I promise that your feelings will change once you see our performance. If this isn't the best circus and carnival you've ever been to, then I'll eat my hat. I couldn't help but crack a smile. She was a performer, all right. And she was good at what she did, too. Who would have thought that a creature who saw so much death all the time could be so upbeat? She took her leave to prepare for the show, and I made my way to the large tent. A number of clowns made an honor guard around the entrance. Each one of them was a different sort of creature donned in colorful makeup and traditional clown clothing. Some of their outfits were more horrifying than the others. "Looky here, fellas," one of the clowns pointed at me. "We got a live one!" The brigade of clowns began to laugh uproariously, and I found myself laughing along with them. I used to be afraid of clowns as a kid, but once I got older I realized how hysterical they could be. I would pretend for a moment that there wasn't an actual demon behind that costume. I took a seat facing the center of the stage, and as I looked around I noticed that everything looked just like an average circus. There were no demonic symbols or spooky ghosts floating around. It was just a circus tent. That, above all else, put my mind at ease. Only a couple of minutes later, the lights went out and the place got quiet. A singular spotlight shone onto the center, illuminating a large pedestal. A cloud of purple smoke erupted from the floor, and Cymbeline appeared holding a large, decorated scythe. I had almost forgotten that she was a reaper, but that little showcase happily reminded me. "Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, angels and demons, spirits and souls, welcome to the Red Line Circus." Cymbeline's introduction drew a thunderous applause and cheer from the crowd. "We have a wonderful show planned for you this evening, so keep your eyes peeled and your butts glued to your seats, because you're not going to want to miss this." And then the show began. Everything else around me seemed to melt away as I gazed upon the performance. From Cymbeline's leading to the acrobats and the illusionists, the animals and their trainers, everything was, well, perfect. It was the best show I had ever seen in my entire life. I felt like a 5-year-old kid again watching the circus for the first time. I didn't care if these were creatures that most humans had no idea existed. At that moment, they were performers doing their job. The whole spectacle was wonderful. I never wanted it to end. "Thank you all for joining us," Cymbeline announced at the end of the show. "This is our last night here, and we appreciate all of your support for this wonderful week. Next week's location will be in Barcelona, Spain. Join us if you can. Thank you, and good night." The troupe took their bows, and Cymbeline waved her hat to the crowd. The lights came up, and I came back to reality, finding that I was giving the Red Line Circus a standing ovation with a misty feeling in my eyes. I glanced in both directions to see if anyone had noticed, and quickly made my way to the exit. Just as I was about to pass outside, I felt a tap on my shoulder. It was Cymbeline, wearing a proud grin. "Well, was I right, or was I right?" "You were right," I said, trying to discreetly rub the water from my eyes. "Of course, I'm always right," she declared, placing her hands on her hips like a superhero. I let out a chuckle, but soon felt a sudden forlorn sensation in my chest. This was the last day the Red Line Circus would be anywhere near my location. Who knew if they would ever come back here in my lifetime? Part of me wished that my car had broken down in the same spot a few days ago. "It's a shame that you're leaving so soon after I found this place. I really don't have the money or the methods to travel all over the world." Before I had even finished speaking, Cymbeline had removed her top hat and was reaching around inside of it. She produced a small purple business card with the letters RLC in red. A line of text on the bottom read, "A two-way ticket to the Red Line Circus, to be used at any time. Consider this your way in." Cymbeline handed over the card with a wink. "No matter where we are in the world, you can visit us with that card. Just trace your finger over the RLC and grasp the card tightly. You'll be teleported to wherever the circus is. Then just do the tracing in reverse to go back home. Simple, right?" I didn't think it was that simple. Me, something called a human of mind, and a business card that would teleport me anywhere in the world? Maybe it was time for me to go to bed. I stuffed the card into my pocket, and the Reaper seemed to pout. Had I done something to offend her? "I just realized. I never got your name." "Oh, silly me. How could I have forgotten to give my name to the creature of death? I'm Alex." Cymbeline grinned from ear to ear. "Thanks for coming, Alex. I hope to see you again sometime." I said my goodbyes and made my way back the way I came. I gave one last look at the Red Line Circus before I hazarded the woods again. Something told me that it wasn't the last time I would see it. It was definitely the last time I try anything called dragon's breath again, though. Several minutes later, and I was home safe. The exhaustion had finally caught up to me after the night I had, though I was glad to have seen it all. As I lay in my bed, staring up at my ceiling, I pulled the card that Cymbeline had given me out of my pocket. For a split second, the letters almost seemed to glow with a purplish hue. I closed my eyes and smiled. I always wanted to visit Barcelona.